Sherwin-Williams and save 30% during the Color Sweet Color Sale, August 30th through September 10th. With 30% off paints and stains, you can give your home a color makeover. Jazz up your living room with Jazz Age Coral. Freshen up your bathroom with Freshwater. Or pep up your kitchen with Peppery. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store today. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Hiring picked up in August.
After a day off Thursday, the Rays begin their next homestand tonight. Tampa Bay winning 5 of 8 games on the road, and Kevin Kiermaier's bat is starting to heat up.
The 2-2 pitch. There's a swing and a drive to center field. Back at it is Davis to the wall, and this one is gone. Kevin Kiermaier with his second homer of the day, his 6th home run of the season, and he cuts the lead again to a handful. It's now 8-3.
Kiermaier finished with 6 hits in Toronto, including those 2 home runs on Wednesday in a 10-3 loss. Blake Snell will look for his 18th win of the season tonight as Tampa Bay opens up a 3-game series with the Orioles. Airtime on the Rays Baseball Network begins at 6:30 with first pitch at 7:10. With the Rays Report, I'm Steve Carney.
Catch the Rays all season on the Rays Radio Network. For tickets, visit raysbaseball.com.
Hi, this is Misty Wells, your host of Let's Take It Outside. Join me every Friday, 5 p.m. on your ride home. We'll talk about getting outside, getting dirty, fishing, hunting, diving, and camping. Whatever you like to do when you take it outside. Spend your afternoons with me, Misty Wells, Friday, 5 o'clock, right here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hello there, Tampa Bay. This is former NFL and college football coach Jimmy Johnson. Listen to the Kelly Show every Monday starting at 5 p.m. They can sure use the attention.
And this is former Major League Baseball player, Hall of Famer Wade Boggs. I also hope you listen to the Kelly Show every Monday starting at 5 p.m. They can darn sure use the money.
Hi there. This is marine wildlife artist and conservationist Dr. Guy Harvey. Please listen to the Kelly Show every Monday starting at 5 p.m. They need to feel worthy.
If you would like to become a wholesale buyer of the premium quality longevity product that you hear about right here on the Tan Talk Radio Network for personal service, you can pick up the phone right now and call Lola at 727-441-3311. Again, that's Lola at 727-441-3311. Or for even faster service, log on to tantalkhealth.com. That's tantalkhealth.com. Here's to your health and longevity.
Tom O'Brien is on the Tan Talk Radio Network. Every Monday through Friday from 4 till 5 p.m., Tom takes to the airwaves as he breaks down the day's market action. Tom combines his technical knowledge of the markets with his years of trading experience to take your calls and questions every market day from 4 to 5 p.m. Whether you're new to trading or an active day trader, don't miss out on the Tom O'Brien Show live on the Tan Talk Radio Network from 4 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Hi, this is John Austin, host of the Book Club on the Tan Talk Radio Network. I spent 35 years in publishing, and today I want to tell you about a book that could change your life. The book is No Cash, No Problem. The author is Dave Wagenford. Dave Wagenford is one of the greatest barter experts in the world. He's bartered over $500 million in goods and services. If you want to remodel your home, but the cost is just too high, or maybe there's an automobile that you have dreamed of owning, but thought you just couldn't afford, well, this book will allow you to do both of those things, plus hundreds more with little or no cash. Maybe you're a business owner with a cash flow problem that leads to low or non-existing profits. Read this book and see how you can increase your cash flow and your profits by time-proven techniques. The book again is No Cash, No Problem, and you can buy it now online at www.tantalknetwork.com. Click on the book and follow the instructions, or pick up the phone and call Lola at 727-441-3311. The book costs only $6.99, so do yourself a favor and buy the book today.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
You are about to enter the no superstition zone of rational thinking and intellectual curiosity here on the Atheist Forum. Standing by for your questions or comments at 727-441-3000, where you can talk to a real live atheist here on Tan Talk 1340.
And it's Friday, and welcome once again to the Voice of Atheism in West Central Florida. Today's program will be a potpourri of news and opinion from reliable sources from all over. Our job, with your help, is to try to put these things in context so that we can find the ways in which the world really does make sense. My name is Jim Peterson, and joining me today is Judy Atkins, Executive Director of AOF. Say hello, Judy.
Hello, Judy.
And Mark Brandt, whose wide experiences, education, and extensive travels make him a valued resource for the entire community.
Good afternoon, Jim and Judy.
Mark.
Hello, Mark.
You can participate at any point in our discussion by simply calling 727-441-3000. Give us a call.
Or join us on YouTube. We're available on YouTube live streaming at the Atheist Forum, Atheists of Florida YouTube channel, or on the Tan Talk channel if you don't want to go to an atheist channel. Okay.
We're practically everywhere. It is important to understand that the word atheism simply signifies without God. That's what it means. It's very simple. When you think about it, you may recognize that almost everybody is living their lives without God most of the time. Consequently, most people of nearly every belief system can and must discuss the important problems of living without reference to the highly individualistic religious institutions that try to assert their dominance and control over every facet of life. Dominance and control are, in fact, the source of much of the divisiveness and conflict that roils human society. They are also the reason why the few are so frequently in charge of the fate of the many. Let's take the matter of war. Warfare has always been about exerting political will or dominance. In the most basic way, that's accomplished by one side inflicting enough pain on the other to compel them to acquiesce. It is in the name of the ruling ideology, overtly expressed as with a revolutionary movement, or in the seemingly supportive role of theistic reassurance, that is, religion, that somehow God supports the efforts of the nation state. How easy it has always been to marshal support for fresh military glories, especially in times when some distance has built up from the past sorrows of such adventures. War is an odd thing. It brings out both the best part of our character as well as its worst excesses. It reminds me of one of the greatest legacies of one of our best writers, Mark Twain. His short commentary from 1905, this was after the Spanish-American War, is called The War Prayer. And it's well worth researching. If you go on the web, look for Mark Twain, The War Prayer. And I'm just going to read you a little excerpt from it that gives a flavor. The story begins with a strange man going into a church where the members are celebrating the inauguration of yet another war. And the war is described to them by the preacher in glowing terms, in which God approves of what's going on. And so we have a situation where a stranger walks in, and he walks up to the pulpit, pushes the minister aside, and says, among other things, the following: O Lord our God, help us tear their soldiers to bloody shreds with our shells. Help us to cover their smiling fields with the pale forms of their patriot dead. Help us to drown the thunder of the guns with the shrieks of their wounded, writhing in pain. Help us to lay waste to their humble homes with a hurricane of fire. Help us to wring the hearts of their unoffending widows with unavailing grief. This is the salient heart of the work, the reality that few wish to face. A very real question is, why are we human beings vulnerable to calls to do very irrational, unproductive, and abhorrent things? We have the benefit of 10,000 years of civilization and several hundred years of ever-growing scientific understanding. The past is available in Technicolor and surround sound, in fiction and nonfiction. So why are we still so tolerant of the narrow agendas of those who seek to build personal renown on the bodies of millions of innocent people? Why are we so easily manipulated by those with narcissistic and pernicious personal needs for the power and wealth we have created. What can we do about the social forces, political currents, and the residual influence of decrepit institutions no longer pertinent to our times? I'd like to hear some ideas about that, and I think Mark has one.
Well, what I look at as an indicator of human behavior is animal behavior. If you subscribe to the theory of evolution, which I do, I think animals show us why we have a violent nature. If you look in the natural world, it's really kill or be killed, and you're predator or prey, and there's a struggle for survival. I mean, that's part of what Darwin talked about. And then the other factor, especially as you move into higher primates, is the dominance of a male so that he can gain access to the herd's females. And you see that even in higher primates such as bonobo, well, not so much the
Not
bonobo.
bonobos.
Not bonobos, but
Chimpanzees.
but chimpanzees certainly, and other monkeys where there is a hierarchy. And if a lower status male tries to have access to females, there will be violence. And of course, we're much more sophisticated, so we've institutionalized violence, but it results from a desire to have dominance and control over our society and our life, you know, to give us some insulation against the vicissitudes of life. So, certainly violence with human beings is deep in our brain structure, and it's going to be very difficult to overcome that.
So what do you think about the effect of tribal identity on the propensity to violent behavior, where you as an individual identify with the nation state and the project of war that's constantly being advanced?
That certainly continues until today, and we see a lot of tribalism in the U.S. I think a book has been written by a political commentator or a guy who runs polls by the name of Zogby. I haven't read the book, but he talks about 13 tribes in the U.S., and for just about every tribe, you've got the reverse, whose interests or desires are antithetical to the first tribe. So again, that's part of our human psyche, I think, and moving beyond that is very difficult.
The philosopher Thomas Hobbes described the society of his day, which was an early form of capitalism, being the war of all against all. And he described it in very unpleasant terms otherwise, that life was vicious. I can't remember the litany of the whole thing, and short is how it ended. Mm-hmm. But the idea was that this was the natural condition of man. But I think we have the lesson of history in the broader sense, especially as described by Steven Pinker in many of his books, that in fact civilization is possible. It is possible for people to cooperate and make a better life for them, life for themselves, and to be able to get along with one another, even in the kind of mass society in which we're presently living. What sort of obstacles are we having with that understanding? As I mentioned earlier, we have all of the scientific information, and we have thousands of years of civilization conditioning us, and yet at the same time, we live with a government that occasionally describes our relationship with others as being one of interminable contests, and the need to overcome or get up on top of our rivals economically, ideologically, and otherwise.
Yeah, I think there are watchwords that more than one individual has described is that life throughout history for most folks has been short, mean, nasty, and cruel. And
don't forget brutish.
And brutish.
Yes.
And one of the lessons I think that hopefully we can learn, and one of the reasons I'm an atheist/humanist, is that we need to overcome these Darwinistic antecedents under which our behavior has been formed. And we need to care for each other more than we have in the past. And we need to not pursue material goals, especially money, so much as pursue human goals, humane goals, with each other and taking better care of each other. And I'm certainly not a paragon of virtue in that regard, but I think we all need to. The lesson of Darwinism is that we need to try and move beyond that. And it is very difficult. It takes a lot of energy and focus and restraint. But to me, that's the ultimate goal, is to make a better life for human beings and all living creatures. And I would also interject that one of the problems I think we face in trying to do that is population. We're now at record population in the world, and if you look at a very small scale, if you have 2 people, you have 1 relationship. If you have 3 people, I think it balloons to 5 or 6 relationships. If you have 4 people, it's 16 or 20 relationships. So with 7 billion plus people, how many relationships and conflicts are we going to have? And we're running into each other. And so the chance of having conflicts grows geometrically, not arithmetically. So I see that as a real problem.
Well, let me just jump in here. We have a comment from one of our listeners, Atheiscus Maximus. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but he does say that the root cause of much of human conflict is the tendency to commit the confirmation bias, tribalism. As a species, we have evolved to seek out and join groups. And he's saying that tribalism is the problem. And he agrees with Jim that Steven Pinker is a great guy. Sorry.
Wow, good.
That's not exactly what he says, but I'll paraphrase what he says here. But tribalism served us well during evolution. It just, I don't think, anticipated the large population we have now, and it's not a terribly effective way of dealing with issues now.
Yeah, I think what we need to build on what Mark said and what you said also, as well as our listener, is that we need to expand because we can only build on what we started off with. So we start off with primitive agricultural tribes and so forth.
Gathering and hunting.
Gathering and hunting, yes, all those relationships that we had among a small group of people who were coherent and consistent in their relationships with each other. But we need to build on that, and I think that we have built on that. We've even gone so far as to define international institutions, whereas whole countries, through the aegis of the United Nations, for instance, and many other international organizations, have cooperated with each other. The European Union is a good example. Formerly warring states that were going at each other tooth and nail, and now they're all living with each other. I mean, it's not without some conflict from time to time, but at least we don't have world wars occurring, at least at the moment. But we need to find ways, and we are finding ways, in fact, of bringing the whole world together and enabling people to feel that the human family is an expansive concept. That is, that whereas the tribe looks at it in a very narrow way, as defined by the human family, and looks for the chief, usually a male, to be the father figure, and so forth. But we're getting past all that. We're beginning to understand our own psychology and the propensities it has to the kind of authoritarianism that finds the strong men at the top of the heap, like Stalin or Hitler or any of those characters. I mean, it's been such a recent occurrence that we have come this far. Many of us can still remember Mao Zedong. And I was born when Hitler was still alive, back in 1944. But we need to how can we strive to develop these institutions when there's evidently a counter trend going on across the world in some of the European countries like Hungary, Poland, other places. We found a considerable reaction, largely based on what has happened in Syria and the flood of refugees that has come forth. Yes.
Yeah, I don't see what's happening in Europe, where there are some right-wing governments arising, as withdrawing from international cooperation. But I do see that in the U.S., where we are unilaterally withdrawing from the nuclear deal with Iran, the Paris Climate Treaty, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, NAFTA, and we're trying to go it alone and come out on top in everything. And I just don't see that as a humane theory or philosophy to have at this point, because we're all human beings. We share one world. We have no alternative where we can go, and we need to get along. And we need multilateralism and cooperation. But I would say that if we get so many people that life becomes a struggle for survival again, then you will see more conflict, and you'll see people trying to go it alone and build fences instead of bridges. And so while I think Steven Pinker is certainly right in his book about the better angels of our nature, I think that is something that's been built based upon technological and civilizational advances. But that could go backwards if we end up having worldwide climate catastrophes or events that, if the population gets such that mere survival is a real struggle, then we could go back to our Darwinistic beginnings of the struggle for survival and survival of the fittest, which would be a sad world to live in.
I think what you've described is the outlook of a CEO, someone who is in competition with other corporate entities to come out on top. And that's what our national administration currently seems to be all about. And it's all about the competition. But in the world of the closely integrated national and subnational entities that have to get along, we have to cooperate when it comes to the environment, because it's everywhere. We share a common atmosphere, common oceans, everything. And we can't afford any longer to allow someone to become the dominant force to decide how to administer all the resources of the earth, when we all are obliged to share them, or at least we should be in a position where we should feel that rather strongly.
every country in the world, except the U.S., there might be one other, has subscribed to the Paris climate controls.
Yes, you're right.
And why we think we can withdraw from that and pollute and accelerate climate change by our self-indulgence is just way beyond my ability to understand at this point.
Well, I think it comes about because of the competitive advantage, the value of having the ability to disregard other people's interests and concentrate wholly on your own. And this is not the sort of thing which can be tolerated in a world that's this small with so many people in it. You may recall that this the whole problem of Syria, the massive civil war and the killing of literally millions of people and the displacement of millions more from their homes, the destruction of cities and so forth. And that's just happening in our own time. It's happening right now. And it's happening largely because of water shortages. Water, which formerly flowed down the Jordan River that separates Syria from Iraq and other countries, was sequestered in Turkey because Turkey wanted to build a dam. And consequently, the water available for the farmers in Syria was insufficient for them to grow large crops. They went out of business. So consequently, they moved into cities. The cities had no employment for them. And pretty soon, you have a very restless population of young men who were very angry. And so you had the basis there of a civil war, which matured, and, well, then we know what happened. And not that the government of Syria was terribly helpful in that, because it was run by the dictator, what's his name?
Assad.
Assad, yes. So we really need to, I think we're about up to the point where we should be taking a break at some point here rather quickly. But I'll continue on as long as our engineer permits. I think, well, is there any other thing you would have to say about the current topic? All right. Apparently not. We can't have dead air now.
No takers.
We've got to say something here.
No takers.
So no takers. You'd think a subject like that would elicit more excitement and thrills, but evidently not. So we'll go on and we'll go for the. Oh, okay. We're going to go for a break right now, and here it comes.
Atheists of Florida is a nonprofit membership organization founded in 1992. For over 25 years, Atheists of Florida has brought atheists together to address state-church separation issues, provide legal assistance in cases of religious discrimination in employment or educational institutions, help atheists meet others who want to live their lives free of religion, and produce the Atheist Forum. For membership information, visit our website at atheistofflorida.com, where you'll find our newsletters, annual reports, statement of purpose, and information about meetings and events. That's atheistofflorida.com.
Alrighty, let me remind you one more time that if you want to participate and call in, you can do so by going to 727-441-3000. So we're anxious to hear what you have to say. We also have a message board on our YouTube channel, so feel free to write in. And other than that, Judy, it's about time that we have a quote.
Well, this isn't exactly a quote. It's a definition. And it is the definition in the Urban Dictionary for blasphemy. And that is defined as what ignorant people call it when smart people try to explain things to them.
I had a discussion the other day with
We got a phone call, too.
With a
phone call.
friend who is very religious, and I told him frankly I had blasphemed the Holy Spirit, which is one of the unforgivable pardons according to the Gospels, and he tried to convince me that I hadn't done that, so I could still be saved. So,
blessings upon thee, my son.
well, and blaspheme is in the eye of the beholder.
Or the ear. Speaking of ears, we have a caller. Caller, hello, and welcome to the Atheist Forum.
Good afternoon. My name is Bo. I'm calling from Clearwater. Hi. As a born-again Christian, having been raised Southern Baptist, I'll never forget, as I was being raised, we used to sing a song, Onward Christian Soldiers. And, it was an uplifting song. And now that I look back on it, and the way I was raised in the religion, being patriotic was godlike.
Yes.
And my whole family was has been in the military. Most of my family is buried back in National Cemetery, Jefferson Barracks, outside of St. Louis. And I had an uncle who was so dear to me. He was in Vietnam, and he was a highly decorated soldier. He enlisted at 17 years of age. My grandmother signed him up. He felt it was his duty to go to Vietnam. He was a helicopter gunner, sat on the side of a helicopter with a 50 caliber machine gun, killing innocent Vietnamese. He had confirmed over 200 kills. When his helicopter was eventually shot down, he was wounded twice. He was highly decorated, 2 Purple Hearts, Silver Star, Bronze Star with clusters. And he couldn't live with the pain when he came back home. And he took his life when he was 35.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
It's a terrible thing.
This is over 30 years ago, and it's still
painful.
It still affects me.
Yes.
Of course.
Because when we buried my uncle at our cemetery back home in the Ozark Mountains, my grandmother wanted him buried next to her. I still remember the day. I was only 19 years old, and I'm a 56-year-old man today. And I find it repulsive that people that have never gone to war are so quick to go to war.
Yes.
And that they feel it's our duty as being Christ-like or God-like, where all the people in Vietnam, and my uncle realized that after he had experienced the war, all they wanted was to have decent living, a decent place, a decent way of life. And one of the last things my uncle was reading was the Communist Manifesto. I mean, his views totally changed after coming back from Vietnam. And I'm just appalled at that people would think it's Christ-like to kill other human beings, and why we can't just help people and not try to kill people. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you so
for sharing
much
that.
for sharing that. That's a terrible experience for you and your family. And
it's with us. It's with us till the day we die.
yes, yes. You get through life, but the pain is still there. And I too was raised in Southern Baptist Church. After we moved to Florida, I was in a fundamentalist church before that, and I remember singing that song too, and the attitude towards people outside our tribe was that they weren't people, and that's how we justify so many things, is by
and I think that leads me to the thought that we live on this world, which is really a speck of dust in the cosmos. I mean, you can't see it if you get to the area of Saturn or Jupiter or whatever. There's 7 billion people on a speck of dust, and how the creator of the cosmos would create such a material world with so much conflict in it and so much need for dominance. And so that's one of the more philosophical reasons that I just can't accept a benevolent deity in Judeo-Christian terms. And I do think that religions are man-made, and they are created for the purposes of control and order in society. And every tribe throughout history and even prehistory had some religious tenets which tended to bind the tribe together against their neighbors. And we've grown larger, and we have transnational religions now, but they're still in conflict on this tiny speck of dust.
And so much of what's in the Bible even is it gets ignored. Treating each other, what you do to the least of these you've done to me. All of those things get ignored by people who, like you said, want to control other people and can't, and just don't want to get along with others and want to have everything on their own terms. And it's very hard. It's very hard when you go through that kind of experience.
I just wish people would. We used to sing another song, red, yellow, black, and white.
Everybody's precious in His sight.
In their sight.
Yes.
Jesus loves the little
children of the world.
Children of the world.
Yes.
And
that's something we agree with.
yeah,
Yes.
and if we could just all love each other,
Yes.
It would be a better place.
Yes,
you
it
know.
would.
Even if we can't love each other, we could at least respect each other.
Right, tolerate
We
each
all
other.
have to live in this
and-
world, and
yes.
it's growing smaller all the time, and our problems grow greater as our numbers increase. But yet, one thing that history has revealed to us is that we humans are the most precious and valuable thing in the universe that we know of. Even though it's just a little tiny marble in the middle of nowhere, amidst trillions of stars and more. We're okay.
Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you for calling
and share anytime.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Bye. All right. Well, that was a very illuminating call, I think.
Well,
One that shows some of our...
It kind of turns me to what we talked about a little earlier in terms of what can we do about this situation. And I know, Mark, you and I agree on this, and one of the most important things we can do is to vote. And vote in people who respect those values, who take to heart. I don't believe in a God, but I do believe in the values some of the values that are taught more along the Jeffersonian Bible of treating each other with respect and taking care of each other. And we need to look for candidates who will do that, who will overcome their the tribalism that they were raised with and try to bring about a better world for everyone. And the only way that we can do that is through a secular government. A religious government is always going to have the outs, and people who don't believe what they believe have to be taken care of and re-educated and whatever.
Second-class citizens.
Yeah, second-class citizens. And consequently, finding out how the person you're going to vote for looks at a secular government is extremely important. They can have all kinds of views that I disagree with, but if they believe in a secular government, if they support the efforts of a secular government, then I'm going to look at them seriously voting for them.
And it's important to remember that we do support the idea of a secular government, and by secular doesn't mean that everybody believes in secularity. It means that we respect the right of each individual human being to have their own ideas about how the world is made, how it is composed, and how we should proceed. It's a respect for that personhood that makes the difference between secular government and a religiously oriented government, which I'm sure incorporates many virtues, but if one of them is not going to be respected, then it's not worthy of the support of anyone.
And I do think that there's a natural tendency for the government to try and develop or keep institutions which do maintain some order and some control. So religion does that, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, whatever. And so to get away from that, we need to compartmentalize and segregate those issues. And I agree that people should be allowed to believe what they want.
Absolutely.
But we need to base our laws and our government on empirical data and facts as to what is beneficial and what is not beneficial, rather than some internal belief. And I think the bumper sticker that I've seen that I like the best is, "Don't believe everything you think." And
that's a good one, yes.
and I find myself thinking things sometimes, and then I stop and say, does that really make sense? Do I have any data to support that, or any good evidence, any facts? And so I think we should always pause when we've got these beliefs and question ourselves as to whether this is really supported by reality.
In Cape Town, South Africa right now, the city and its environs has more or less completely run out of water. Because there's been a tremendous drought over the last 3 years, and their supply has not been replenished. Religious believers say that God will take care of it. However, they're still out of water. Doesn't matter what they think or what they believe. The question is that, as empirically measured, that is, the actual experience of measuring the water in the reservoir shows there's none left. So what they have to do is to make various contingencies and truck water from other parts of the country, or pipe it in, whatever they have to do to supply the minimal needs of the population. But the overall crisis is largely having to do with the kind of climate change that's affecting everybody everywhere. In their particular case, it has to do with the water supply. But we cannot rely upon non-objective, purely subjective assessments of the situation and what there is to do about it. We have to figure out how to proceed. It's like you don't consult the Bible to repair your car, or decide what to do with your broken refrigerator, or how to measure the carpet properly for a room. All of these things are practical things we do every day in our lives, and we don't consult God or the Bible or any other thing like that in order to do them.
But the religious response to that crisis would probably be that we've done something wrong and God is punishing us or testing us. And then if the rains come back in a year or two, it was because we prayed and asked for it, and so God answered our prayers. And frankly, there's just no evidence for that whatsoever. And the only uplifting of humanity, if we've had any in the last few thousand years, is been done by mankind. I mean, if you look at medicine and so on, 100 years ago or 200 years ago, people prayed and people died all the time. Now we've got advanced medicine that can really save people and ameliorate pain and suffering. And it's all been the result of human advance.
Well, but it also, that doesn't address the emotional pain that people are in, as our caller was, about things that is done to other people, and the impact of decisions that are made in religion's name or in nationalist name or whatever. And I understand that the climate is important, but to me, and it's obvious it is, and that people won't survive unless we do something. But this is just another aspect of how we ignore the emotional growth of people at our peril. It is important to acknowledge the pain that people feel and how we must deal with these issues on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And we have to get rational quickly, because to deal with problems, with human problems in a purely emotional way, is to court the possibility of further intensification of those same problems.
Yes, but you can't ignore emotional needs of people.
That's right. And so in devising our strategy or our response, we have to take into account how people feel about things. I quite agree with you there. But we also, and it is imperative to do this, focus people's attention and energy on the actual problems and what the actual possible solutions might be. Because with a ever-burgeoning population and with ever more critical problems as with the water, with the oceans, every aspect of the environment that we have to deal with has something to do with human development and with human well-being. And if we're not going to deal with that in a rational way, it's going to come back to bite us in a big way. In fact, in such a way, it may even, it could trigger something that would be truly devastating to our species.
And we have another comment on our YouTube page, and is that, and the day we discover other sentient beings in the universe is the same day we need to expand our tribe to include them. For me, the capacity to suffer is how I determine the parameters of my tribe. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good quote. And even if you discover life on other worlds, we have to take care that we don't destroy that life
yes.
and all life on this planet. I mean, we are really in an era where humans are destroying a lot of living creatures on the planet.
Yes, a lot of massive species extinctions are occurring.
And I think scientists are even calling this the Anthropocene, which is the time on Earth when there could be great die-offs of species caused by human activity.
The analogy I like to use is the airplane. You can start taking bolts out of an airplane and it'll go and it'll stay together, but at some point it falls apart because you've taken that one last bolt out that held it finally together. And we don't know what species that will be that will destroy human life.
Yeah.
That's the origin of the phrase, bolt out of the blue. If it lands on your head.
And one of the problems is that it's not an overnight occurrence.
No, it isn't.
It's a slow process. And so human nature, and again, this may be one of our shortfalls in our behavior, is that we refuse to look long-term, refuse to look about sustainability. And so certainly there's the possibility of major collapses
but we do have other people who are doing that. China is one of the biggest users of solar energy now, and they need to. They need to cut down on their pollution, as do we, and so many other countries are going to sustainable energy and taking care to try to help preserve
But
the
we're trying to
environment.
revive coal.
I know.
So,
trust me, I know.
I mean, we're racing to get back to the 19th century,
Yes.
it seems like.
Well, some people are, but in fact, the coal industry is really going nowhere because there's no demand for coal.
Yeah.
No increase in demand.
And
at any rate.
the jobs weren't lost. I can talk about this because my father was a coal miner. So I grew up in West Virginia. I was in a coal mining town. And those jobs are not coming back because of automation, which is a good thing because people should not be in the coal mines. I'm sorry, I can remember as a child my father coming home from work and it was horrible. And it's not a good job.
Yeah.
And people don't need to be doing that work. And they need to have the opportunity to grow and expand and learn other skills. And not that there's nothing bad about what they do in terms of them as human beings.
Yeah,
It's just that human beings should not have to be digging coal out of the ground.
Right.
In your father's case, as in so many others, they were doing it simply because it was the only job available.
Exactly.
It was all they could do, so they did.
Yes, he had to quit school when he was in 8th grade because his father was a coal miner and died. So, it was not like he had any other options.
It's typical of our species that once we get into a rut, we continue to dig ourselves further and further into it.
The road who followed a path that people walked and went around a tree, and they built the road because that's the path people had always taken, instead of trying to research it and determine what would be the best path.
But yet, in our time, we have discovered that communications could make all the difference.
Yes.
It can make people aware that there are, in fact, other options out there.
Yes.
Different ways to live your life, different things to think, different
But we have to
experiences
address their
have.
fears and their concerns because it is scary to take on a whole new way of life.
Yeah, I'd like to go back for a minute to your talk about an emotional nature that we have, and I agree with that. I think all mammals have, to one degree or another, an emotional nature, and we should not deny that. And certainly there's a lot of emotional pain that people have, almost everybody has during their life. And I think one of the main reasons religion exists is that it offers hope and comfort and answers to these perplexing questions.
I don't know about answers, but
they
give you
they give you nostrums or whatever you want to call them.
They make you feel better.
And the only thing is that I don't mind people looking for hope and comfort, even if it's in what I would consider mythology. But the problem is, a lot of people want it so concrete that they want to tell everybody how to live their life.
Yes.
And that's the dominance and control. And if they want to be religious, that's fine. But I would hope that people would maintain some doubts so that they can say, okay, you don't believe as I do, and I respect your right to believe the way you believe, even though I don't do it. So,
well, going along with that is that I was reading the Joint Baptist Commission or committee, I can't remember which, statement to Brett Kavanaugh, the nominee for the judge, and they are very adamant about state church separation and having a secular government because Baptists were way discriminated against in the early founding of this country, and that's Jefferson's letter to the Westboro Baptist.
No, more like the Danbury Baptist.
Danbury Baptist. So, it's not just non-religious people who want that state church separation. It's a large number of religious people, too.
If we have religious dominance, then there will be Nicene warfare,
Yes,
and
frequently has
and certain religions will be pushed out, and those will be Christian religions.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's a very dangerous and slippery slope that
Yes,
we
it
go
is.
on if we want some kind of religious nationalism.
Yes, because the largest growing segment of the population are Muslims. And Christians are not going to be happy if Muslims get in control of the country and they become the minority religion.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the same applies to Muslims.
Yes.
It applies to every religion.
But it is one of the interesting things that I wanted to bring up today was the growth of atheism and why people become atheist. And it's interesting that what they're finding is that the hypocrisy among religious groups is one of the things that leads to atheism. And the other thing that tends to lead to it is authoritarianism. If you grow up in a very authoritarian family that's religious, then it tends to, you do tend to become an atheist at an earlier age than otherwise.
Yeah.
So atheism is going to grow.
And it is growing. In fact,
it is
a
growing.
large number, surprisingly, of the population professes to have no religious affiliation.
Right.
Over in Hillsborough
Doesn't mean
County,
they don't believe.
Over in Hillsborough County, if you go to the website for the county, it says that as many as 60% of the population professes no religious allegiance. Now, I don't know if that's true, or it could be that they fumbled with the statistics. Certainly, it surprised me, but I think we'll have to see how that develops. But in the meantime, it's close to the end of our show, and we hope you'll join us again next week on the Atheist Forum. In the meantime, along with Judy Atkins and Mark Brandt, I'm Jim Peterson, reminding you that if the story seems a little too implausible to be true, don't believe it just because somebody wrote it down.
Make them prove it.
There you go. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Atheist Forum. To learn more about Atheists of Florida, visit our website at atheistofflorida.com. Continue the discussion on our website, talk.aof.ngo. And join us again next Friday for another edition of the Atheist Forum here on Tan Talk 1340.
WTAN, Clearwater.
FM 106.1.
WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay.